still a bunch of lovable loonies. 5 stars on iTunes. I persuaded a few of you to review our podcast on iTunes after the Christmas issue of the Wiggly Podcast. So here it is.
You took a different tack, didn't you?
I did. I went for, yo, Scrooge, give us a review. I mean, that is quite kind, because you know what I was secretly thinking? Order! So you live in New Zealand. Don't you think you should send your friends flowers in the UK?
Yeah.
So you live in California. Do you not think I can post goat socks out there? So you live in Hay-on-Wye. I can personally deliver. Order. But no.
How much would it cost me to order a bouquet of flowers to be sent to my friend in New Zealand? Is that achievable, do you think? It's easy for a New Zealand person to order a bouquet of flowers, a Wiggly bouquet of flowers for their chums or family or whatnot in Blighty.
Yes.
But...
Oh, well, you'd have to do Interflora, wouldn't you?
Yes, and it wouldn't be the same though, would it then?
It wouldn't be anywhere near the same.
It wouldn't be the beautiful quality of
it wouldn't be the seasonal.
This is a red letter moment in my life. I have seen Ricardo.
Fill your eyes lit up again.
Here we are. We're at the end of the first week of January, and the old codger has done something that could be construed as commercial. What a star! Unbelievable.
Why is everyone? You're not alone. I mean, everybody just seems to be calling me old
and codger, commercial.
Git. I'm sure I'm not any. Well, I mean, obviously I am 40 now, but
I have to.
I don't feel old.
I have to mention my equally elderly friend and colleague, Mr. Sherlock, who I think summed up your status quite admirably in terms of elderliness, stiffness, and various broken bits of body and dysfunctionalness.
Yeah, I'm not sure how old Simon is. How old is Simon? Do you know?
Older than you,
Mr. Sherlock. Older than me. He is. But indeed.
Anyway, Wiggly sales still on, Rich.
Right.
Bargains.
Right. When does it finish again?
25th of January 2010. I don't mind when you listen to this. In fact, any January you listen to it, imagine you might have got a sale. Check out the website, www.wigglywiggles.co.uk.
Right.
Press buy on items. Fill in the long number in the middle with a security code on the back. We're happy.
Going back to Simon, did he tell you about his goings-on with the master composters? Because he's trained to be a master composter now, hasn't he?
He did tell me. Congratulations,
I think
Simon.
he was flying the flag for Wigglies as well.
I think he was.
So,
good old boy.
Yeah.
There's lots of those about now. I don't know why you didn't make it. I remember them inviting you.
I said, should I go to a master composter? And the woman said, I don't think you need to.
I think Ricardo...
I was kind of looking for a day off.
Ricardo was concentrating on that nice young research assistant at the Worm Charming Championships, I think was probably the issue there.
Moving on, here's my review by Wildlife Services. It's been a while, sadly, since I listened to the Wiggly Podcast, but I'm pleased to hear that it's lost none of its infectious humour, light-hearted banter and general silliness, interspersed with interesting snippets and facts, and delivered, as always, with Heather's wonderful giggles. I look forward to hearing more from the Wiggly team during 2010. Now my Wiggly free state has ended at last. Martin.
Cool.
Nice. Coming up on today's show, we're going to find out from Richard, where are you to put that nest box up? Nest box week starts 8th of February. It's secretly too late, isn't it? Do you think?
8th of February.
It's
probably okay. I mean, but the interesting about nest boxes is that we put them up thinking that they're specifically there to house a brood of birdies, and
we do.
The reality is that nest boxes are also really good winter roosts. So I wouldn't say, leave it until the middle of February to put them in nest box, purely so that you get some tits nesting in there in the springtime. Get their nest box up as soon as you can, because especially when the weather's like this, what people have found is that you'll end up with nest boxes inundated with tiny little feathered forms, because it gives them an opportunity all to bundle in together, especially tight family groups like long-tailed tits, for instance, and wrens, where they'll just merge and they'll all find one suitable place and they'll pack in there together so they can enjoy each other's body heat. And nest boxes are able to provide those opportunities.
But wouldn't they like a perch? Because my chickens like to perch.
When they roost. It's not necessary with little songbirds. Obviously some birds prefer to nest in different situations. So, for instance, we've talked about Leylandi hedges before now as being relatively invaluable for wildlife, which is absolutely true.
But they do roost in there, don't they?
Because of that density, that thick form, they do make ideal roosting spaces, and you will end up with birds getting into that little tight-knit bed and roosting.
Volume of hedge. I know they don't have leaves on in the wintertime, but if the hedge is large enough and it's got all different species and it can be quite dense, they'll go in there and roost a treat, won't
Definitely.
What about ivy, Rick?
Ivy's a fabulous thing. And of course, ivy now, if you go out, the whole country is essentially white, very cold, and is likely to remain so for quite a long time. Now, ivy is one of the amazing instances in nature that contradicts other plants. So it's providing fruit when everything else has gone over. So most plants, throwing their berries up, late autumn, early winter. Ivy is berrying now right through to the early spring. Arguably, this is a time when birds need more fodder, because in actual fact, if you look around in our hedgerows and things like that, I've noticed even the disgusting tasting berries off the Guelder Rose and things like that have gone.
Yep.
It's a real indication that birds are needing to stuff their faces as much as physically possible just to stay alive when it's bitterly cold like this.
The last few years,
and ivy's a brilliant roost as well, isn't it?
Yeah, but I was going to say, the last few years I've noticed that most of the choice berries have gone off the hedges before Christmas. There's the hawthorn berries and the holly berries. You go looking for holly at Christmas, wanting holly with berries on, and that's all disappeared by then. So that can only mean that the birds need food. So as you say, ivy berries and anything else.
But ivy's a great, and it's kind of much maligned. People think, ivy, it's going to go up that tree and completely throttle it and kill it. In some instances, it will do that. But the reality is, it's often quite nice if you've got sufficient trees or a couple of trees in the garden. Let that tree be inundated with ivy. That wonderful big ivy knoll that will allow inverts to hibernate inside it, as well as to allow roosting sites for little birds.
Perfect. So fruit then. We do sultanas and they go part of the Wiggly Worm mix, but should you be putting out apples, pears?
Apples are great at this time of year. And in the old orchards, which are diminished somewhat, what you will tend to find is there's very little to beat the sounds that are associated with those old orchards, that kind of clacking of the fieldfares and the redwings, that are feeding on all the fruit that's fallen off those big old trees. There are certain types of apples. For instance, there's a classic apple, Ashmead Kernel, which I know I've talked about previously. You can use it as a dessert apple, but that tree tends not to fruit until quite late on in the year. So you can pick those apples off the tree in December. Now, it's worth planting trees like that fruit quite late on in the year. So having a kind of sequence of fruiting almost, so that it provides opportunities for birds to feed right through. Other than that, why not pick some of those apples earlier on in the year, wrap them up in newspaper and store them in bags, and then just keep chucking out a few apples. And I know, again, a commercial opportunity for you have.
Just a minute.
But you still do those apple feeders, don't you? With a neat little apple shape and a spike through that.
We do.
There's only a couple of quid, isn't it?
They are.
They look good, and equally, it's a fabulous little
lots of money. They're oak.
little spike through, and what that does is elevate the apple, keeps it off the ground, and consequently, it won't rot as fast as one would if it's on the ground.
Do they like them rotting, or do they like them fresh?
They like them maturing. They don't like rotten apples.
Can you put things out like bananas?
I have no idea.
I'll let you know. Here we are. Here is a review of our raisins by Sue Suzman. Isn't that a great name, isn't it?
Yeah.
Blackbirds can't get enough, particularly in winter. Bird feeders are geared for flight birds, but seed mixed with raisins is a great way of feeding ground birds.
Right.
Happy with that?
No, definitely. And of course, it does give them lots of moisture. When you look out there now, you think, it's all kind of very snowy, and the last thing you think of it is it being dry. Because it is dry, isn't it? Everything's frozen. There's very little moisture. The air's dry. And
so fruit is another way of getting water.
Because they can't drink. The other day, I gazed out of my window and I looked across on our little hedge in front of the house there, which is pretty much inundated with ivy, and there was a song thrush drinking the frozen water that was melting in the early morning sun off of some of the ivy leaves, and it just goes to show that bird needed that liquid drink, and that was where it was getting it from at that time in the morning. But if you can, it's always worth. And we've talked about it lots of times before, but yeah, a little bowl of water is all important. But of course, sultanas are obviously going to have, and raisins are going to have much more moisture in them than dry mealworms, for instance. I mean, fresh live mealworms are ideal, but dry mealworms have very little moisture in them.
The other great thing about dried fruit, for any of you who have stolen raisins and sultanas from your mother's cake making department, they're sweet. The sugars in them are partly broken down, so they're a real good energy hit for birds first thing in the morning. Their energy, because it's straight sugar, they can use it straight away. There's very little digestive requirement on it, whereas if you eat carbohydrate, they have to digest it to break it down into the sugars. So that is another benefit of feeding things like raisins and sultanas.
Okay, Rich, you've only got 3 types of food to feed the bird. You can't muck about. 3 best things for brekkie in the cold.
Okay.
What do you think?
I would say fat with seed mixed into it.
Suet.
That's really good.
Blocks.
You know, suet blocks are really good. I mean, if you get those giant suet blocks, they're ideal because you can whop them on a bird table and you essentially forget about the thing for a couple of weeks. When the weather's bad like this, you know that the birds are going to have a source of food that they can keep coming to in and fro in. And you know this time your bird tables, your feeding stations are inundated because there's very little of anything else for them to find to eat. So definitely those. I would say something like sunflower hearts, again, are really, really good because, again, full of fat, nice bit of moisture, and certainly quite tasty.
And no work in taking off the shell.
No. That's right, indeed.
Because I hate those darn nuts. We didn't have any for Christmas. Because it's such a palaver, isn't it? Clicking them, getting all the shell off. You know, we need ease of use.
Yeah, we didn't have any nuts. Now I know. Now I mean, thirdly, what people tend to feed, the most common thing. There are, you know. I mean, in fact, we still provide peanuts, but ultimately we thought about trying to get away from providing as many peanuts because it's not something that Phil can produce on the farm. You know, it has to be imported. But they are a really good source of food. So I'd be torn between. Providing the birds with a couple of feeders full of peanuts, or possibly cooking up some porridge oats.
Oh!
Get some oats, and bird feed oats are going to be possibly less expensive than your classic bag of Quakers.
Doubt it.
From who knows where.
Yes, they are.
But you know, just
cook them up. Really?
When you cook up some porridge in the morning, cook up an extra dollop for the birds. Because they adore it.
Really?
And it's going to be much, much easier for them to digest it because it's already been cooked and broken down to a certain extent.
Or don't you have milk in yours?
It's a little bit of milk wouldn't be a problem at all, but I tend to make my porridge with a majority of water, you know, and then a little
so
splash
tight.
of milk. Yeah, well, it could be that, but it's not. It tastes. Whereas it's not too much milk isn't very good for you anyway, is it? You know, you don't want to. It's got mucus and things like that again for humans, I think. So it's
too much milk.
And it's also
very
fattening,
good
isn't it, Phil? Which is why
you
tend to drink too much.
I suppose you're going to tell me that beer is the world's healthy drink. Drink beer, not milk.
Too much milk. It's like anything, Phil.
There's a special review for you here.
Right. Okay, this is a review from Fred Gray. Fred says, I'm off to work and I'm missing listening to your weekly podcast. Just finished downloading old episodes to keep me happy. Got a Bokashi starter pack for Christmas. Opened it early and have filled 1 bucket. Nearly filled the second one now. Ordered more Bokashi bran and birdseed. My father-in-law got a mixed lot for Christmas. He lives in Galloway and has red squirrels that he feeds every day. Lovely sight to see the young ones in summer as they scramble all over his feeders. Miss you all, especially Phil. From
Good
Fred.
man,
From Fred.
Thank you for that.
That's nice of you to say so,
like
Fred. Phil will like that, definitely.
Pick the bones out of that fish bone.
Okay, and our last review is from Mike the Bee. What I like about this is he did it on Christmas Day.
We like reviews on Christmas days. So this came, as Heather said, from Mike the Bee. If you search the web for Wiggly, then several will appear, but this one is unique, and I reckon it's the best. Heather and her team tackle topics from soil through worms and into tea. Just listen to the tea special and laugh, I nearly fell off the turkey. Well, it's Christmas morn here in England, but I thought I must wish Team Wigglers a Merry Christmas, all the best for 2010, and this long-intended review is the excuse. Who would imagine tea tasting could be so hilarious? It was mentioned that the brew was strong, but intoxicating it was, some bits a bit rude, a huge dose of innuendo, and more giggling than wiggling. A great antidote to any winter blues. Cheers to you all, Mike the Bee. Thank you very much indeed for that, Mike.
Excellent.
I'm not sure about praise for Ricardo's innuendo.
No, you don't need to do that.
And if you want more information about bees and Mike the Bee, if you go to Twitter and follow Mike the Bee, you'll find him there. If you want to follow us on Twitter, obviously, Ricardo, you're not on there, are you?
No.
Cannot make 140 characters relevant.
I think it's rubbish.
I am on Twitter and I'm at Wiggled. I love Twitter. Farmer Phil's on Twitter and he is at
Farmer Phil with no E.
And you can find us on Facebook. Go to Facebook and then search on Wiggly Wigglers. We'd love to see you there. Or come and comment on the blog. That'd be nice. Listen, Rich, you went off to the RHS. What were you doing, old boy?
Oh gosh, that was a while ago, wasn't it? The RHS Gardens Wisley, nonetheless, just before Christmas. I think I'm possibly halfway through December now, isn't it? I went down because a while ago, we've spoken about this on the podcast before, English Nature Now, Natural England, started up a forum for gardening for wildlife, and they have meetings biannually. And this was the rounding up of 2009, so I went down there and liaised with a bunch of people, did a little spiel about how Wigglies could potentially work with other organisations, things that Wigglies do that other organisations can do and liaise with, and I got a cheeky little interview with a chap called Brett Westwood, who's worked for BBC Nature for quite a long time. So I managed to get him for 3 minutes, quite literally. I said, hey, Brett, can I speak to you for 3 minutes? He said, as long as it is just 3 minutes. So obviously I had to be concise, which involved not
He's a Radio 4 presenter, isn't he?
Radio 4 presenter, yeah. Oddly, he knows and sat next to a chap called Hugh Cordy, who I've spoken about before, who I spoke to several times before I went to Guyana, because he went to Guyana, and it was his radio programme that gave me the inspiration to go to Guyana, looking for Arapama gigas a few years ago.
And he's from Stourbridge.
Right.
There we are. Let's have a listen.
So it's a pleasure to meet you, Brett. We were talking about a kind of mutual acquaintance you worked with or have worked with down at BBC Bristol. But what are you doing down here?
Well, I'm making a programme at the moment about how valuable wildlife gardens are. And I think the thing about them is we want to try and sort of look beyond the garden and look at habitats further beyond and how they influence things that come into our garden. So if you have a park up the road, then you'll probably get nuthatches or tawny owls. Right. If you've got nettle beds nearby on a local canal or railway siding, then you'll get small tortoiseshells. It's not just about what's in your garden. It's really about what other things can bring into your garden. Your garden's a fulcrum from lots and lots of different species.
That was an interesting point you made earlier on, in fact, as well, that almost, it can be slightly ephemeral in terms of providing opportunities for specific types of wildlife, but ultimately that is equally as important as a space that's there for the long term, you know.
Well, the woodcock that came into my garden is obviously never going to spend its time there for very, very long, because these are birds of high forest. But the nice thing about it was it obviously pitched down. It could have come just in from Scandinavia, because they come in, this time of year, October, November. We get large numbers coming in from the Nordic countries, and it just pitched in, and it saw this wooded cover, sat there for a bit. Maybe a cat frightened it, and that's why I saw it going through. But it provided it with a bit of respite. And yes, you're right, it's not all about communities, it's about these transients. Well, look at the swifts that breed under our eaves all the time. That's a bit of Africa in your roof space.
I know, it's incredible, isn't it? And I think it's a wonderful thing. I mean, I would feel and do feel privileged when animals absorb the refuge that my house and garden can offer them. But I notice your garden is very rich. There's a lot of variety going on.
Untidy, I think, was the word you were groping for.
How big is it?
It's about 120 feet, but it's only about 20 feet wide. So it's long long and narrow.
It's a relatively sort of average garden then, I
Very,
suppose.
very average, yeah, and it's right in the middle of town. But the nice thing about it is it's part of a long-standing system of gardens. So all the houses were built round about the 1870 period. They're all about the same time, and of course they've had lots of changes over that period. But there's a sort of degree of continuity gone on, and I think it's that nothing's ever been cut back. It's not like clear felled forest. Somebody somewhere's always been growing something of interest, and this combination, this sort of patchwork matrix, if you like, of lots of different microhabitats, that's what makes it so rich.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. It's lovely to speak to you. It's lovely to meet you as well.
Thank you, Richard.
Cheers.
Well, Rich, that was fantastic. Brett Westwood.
Excellent.
And you were concise, Rich. Well done.
Farmer Phil, you've had your first calf born this year, and normally that would be a moment of celebration, but...
Not good this time, I'm afraid. Premature, about a month premature, we think. Was born alive, was obviously not right in terms of it was bleating all the time and all floppy. Got some warm colostrum.
Lambs bleat, cows don't bleat, do
Yeah,
they?
calves that bleat persistently at birth, usually there is something
wrong.
dire gone wrong somewhere.
Hurty bleat.
It's difficult to know, I think, not wired up right. Anyway, month premature, very small, got some warm colostrum in as much that that's the best thing you can do. You'll give it the best chance like that. But no, I'm afraid he only lived for 2 or 3 hours. So not a very good start to the campaign.
What happens to a dead calf?
In our case, we take them to the hunt kennels.
And then the dogs eat
And
them.
then they're fed to hounds, yeah.
It's a bit odd, isn't it? Are they cooked?
No.
You know, people wouldn't realise that was the case. You know, again, it's one of those things about. Whilst I don't necessarily agree with hunting per se, I probably agree with banning it even less because of the implications. You know, the ripples it would make across the wider countryside, and it is a good use of resource to be
Absolutely.
able to use that poor dead animal to feed a bunch of dogs that enjoy the tasty bit of veal than they would pedigree chum.
Would farmers feed their own dogs with that then? I mean, presumably you couldn't, because your calf, first of all, you feel a bit funny, but second of all, it would last forever.
Well, hunt kennels are set up to deal with the whole carcass, so that you obviously have to skin the carcass, you have to take the offal away from it, and you've got to dispose of those bits that you're not going to eat. Now, obviously, a farmer is unlikely to be able to do that, although some have got incinerators to do just that now, but the kennels, by law, now have to have the means of disposal of that. So that's one good reason why farmers wouldn't tend to do it themselves. And of course, we have to do something like that because the government have told us that we're not allowed to bury anything anymore. We can bury Granny, but we're not allowed to bury a dead
Only
calf.
if she's dead, Phil.
Yeah, well, only if she's dead. Oh, I tell you what else we can bury.
Yeah.
We can bury a pet.
Yes, that's right. Can you
because
tell
you
me?
can
Yeah,
bury
can
a pet horse.
What makes a pet?
I don't know. You can bury a horse
Well,
because
you're
it's
not
a
going
pet.
to eat it.
Volumes.
Ah,
If you only
volume.
had 2 cows, could you bury one of them?
Well, I think if it was a pet cow, yes.
It's a pet
you could.
cow. So it was
If
something you were
you had
affectionate towards.
40 cats.
But
40 cats.
it's difficult to know, Hev. I noticed this wasn't in Hilary Benn's plan for 2030.
Anyway, we must move on, Michael says. Just for your information, it's now snowing gently in the south of France.
Is it really?
It is snowing gently in the south of France.
Right.
Global, we are. Global, we are.
Yeah.
Listen, before we go, Michael's got a problem with his nest box. He's put up one north-facing, as stated on the Wiggly website, and the Wiggly website got its information from the RSPB, Royal Society for the Protection of Birds. How could they be so wrong? He's put one up facing southish, one up northish. There's none in the northish. He says it's our fault. Ricardo, which way do we point the box man, and how can it not be in the shade if you point it to the north?
Well, we've talked about this many times. We've had a great conversation.
Well, I
this
don't
morning,
care. I want to
haven't
know.
we? The reality is that a nest box should face somewhere between north and southeast. So away from the prevailing conditions, because what the
so
birdies
not
don't want is loads of rain.
southwest.
Not facing south or not facing southwest, but like anything in nature, there are always contradictions. And sometimes, if a bird box is facing southwest in a situation that has some protection from those potentially problematic prevailing conditions, then there's every chance a bird will colonise that.
But this is mad, isn't it? Because the thing is, when the north wind doth blow, we shall have snow.
True.
So the prevailing wind is southwest, but the bird is nesting in the middle of winter.
No, well, what tends to happen is you tend to get fewer north winds than you do
but they're really
southwesterly
bad.
winds.
So you've protected
and also
it, and then the north wind doth blow
you tend to
freezing.
get the north wind tends to blow more in the winter than in the spring and early summer, say, for instance.
And as I understood it, that broods were lost through overheating. If you put the nest box so that the sun shines on it all the way through the day, so facing south, exposed to the sun, it cooks them.
You see, this is it, and this is again what they call it now. Michael's put his nest box up on the back of his house, I'm assuming it's the back of the house, the part of the house that faces north.
Just a minute, dear
always
listener.
in the shade.
Whoa. Dear listener, we will now look towards Michael for a nod.
It's actually on a north-facing wall, which is a neighbour's garage.
Okay.
That was not a nod.
Either way,
is that legal?
It's in the shade
Neighbour's
the whole of the time. Is that right?
Yes, because it's on the north. If you're going to point it north, it must be shaded by the building to which you've attached it.
Right. Now, it would seem that further RSPB advice is that bird boxes that are perpetually in the shade are not good. Is that right?
That's my point.
However, again, there are contradictions. On the north side of my house, I have put 2 bat boxes, some time ago I put 2 bat boxes on either corner of the little cottage suggestions house. Now, those bat boxes have both been colonised by blue tits. The blue tits
that'll be because the hole's underneath, so there's protection.
All the time. Sun never ever gets to it. So they obviously have enjoyed, and they've had chicks, and they've enjoyed those little spaces, regardless of the advice that the RSPB.
Listen to.
You see, the problem is there are no hard and fast rules with nature. But
Here is
there
the
is
problem.
no warmth on
I'm now on the RSPB website.
No.
Here is the problem. Listen to this, right? Unless there are trees or buildings which shade the box during the day, face the box between north and east, thus avoiding strong sunlight and the wettest winds. But then it says, make sure the birds have a clear flight path without any clutter. Tilt the box forward so that any driving rain will hit the roof and bounce clear. Place your box high under the eaves if it's for a housebow and starling, but for a robin and wren it needs to be low down. Hide your robin and wren box in vegetation. But it said you needed a clear flight path. Woodpecker boxes need to be 3 to 5 metre high on a tree trunk with a clear flight path and away from disturbance.
You want to see?
Just put tons up anywhere, it's fine.
I think it's important to make sure they're facing in the right direction, i.e. between north and south. But a variety of situations is really useful, because then those guys will be able to choose which one suits them best. Going back to Phil's point earlier, where you said about the a bird box being placed in a really hot situation. Well, I put a nest box for tits up several years ago on a telegraph post just below the vegetable patch. It's on a south-facing slope, gets very hot all day. Those blue tits had several successful broods. The only reason I removed that nest box is because Mr. Woodpecker came along and nailed the bejesus out of the hole and managed to get in there and get some of the chicks. So I took the nest box down to make sure that those tits didn't nest in there the following year. What I could have done was place a little metal cover over the top of that wooden hole.
Available from wigglyWigglers.co.uk for a very small price.
I think the logical thing is that if you can, you should plant a mixture of vegetation in your garden, so trees, hedges, normal garden plants, and use them to provide the shelter for the nest box wherever it is, so it doesn't get blown away, cooked by the sun or whatever. And they will also provide food for the birds that hopefully you are luring to your garden.
Just a minute, Phil. It also says, remember, trees grow. Thank you.
Handy hint for the day.
Thank you, RSPB. And just before we go, all our Wiggly Podcast New Year's resolutions are coming to play now because you know what it was. To make sure we introduce the team. To make sure that the new listener feels part of our podcast from the very start. He always knows who we are. He always feels a welcome glow. So we'll start next week. In the meantime, I was Heather.
I was Richard.
And I was Farmer Phil. Still am, actually.
And you can find us all by emailing us.
Richard at wigglywigglers.co.uk.
Heather at wigglywigglers.co.uk.
pwg@lowerblakemere.co.uk.
And if you want to find more out about Wiggly Wigglers, you'll just have to go to the website now because I haven't told you anything. www.wigglywigglers.co.uk. Bye.
Bye.
Bye from me. Just listen to the tea special and laugh. I nearly fell off the turkey. Well, it's Xmas morn here in England, but I thought I must wish Team Wigglers a Merry Xmas. All the best for
Say
2010.
Christmas. I don't like Xmas.
I'm only reading it as
yes,
it's
but
written.
no, but that's short for Christmas.
Why is X used to abbreviate Christ?
Save typing Christ.
Yes,
Yeah,
but
what's the relevance, though?
Duh!
it's a cross.
Oh, it's a cross. Okay.
As we all know, Rich is a keen texter. On
something
something
I perhaps ought to have known.
As we've also known.